Today, we are covering three major breaking developments that are reshaping the geopolitical landscape as we speak. First, Iran and Oman are now drafting a joint protocol to supervise maritime traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical choke points on the planet. Second, the war between the United States, Israel, and Iran shows no signs of slowing down, with Trump publicly warning Tehran to make a deal before it is too late. And third, the Trump administration is preparing to unveil a staggering $1.5 trillion defense budget request, the largest single-year increase in American military spending since World War II. These three stories are deeply connected, and by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why. Let us start with the Strait of Hormuz, because what is happening there right now has consequences that reach every corner of the global economy. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister for Legal and International Affairs, Kazem Garibabadi, confirmed on Thursday that Tehran and Muscat are actively drafting a protocol that would give Iran and Oman joint supervisory authority over vessel transit through the strait. To understand why this matters, you need to know what the Strait of Hormuz actually is. It is a narrow waterway, barely 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, that connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and ultimately to the open seas. Approximately 20 million barrels of oil pass through it every single day. That represents roughly 20% of the world's total oil supply moving through one bottleneck. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Iraq, and Qatar all depend on this corridor to export their energy to global markets. If that passage is disrupted, energy prices spike globally within hours. And here is the critical context. Maritime traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has already dropped dramatically since the United States, and Israel launched a joint military offensive against Iran on February 28th. That offensive has killed more than 1,240 people, according to current reports, including Iran's then Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Countries are now seriously evaluating alternative land and sea routes, which tells you everything about how profoundly this conflict has altered the calculus of global commerce. Garibabadi was careful to frame the new protocol as a facilitation measure rather than a restriction, saying it would ensure safe passage and better services for vessels. But his follow-up statement told a very different story. He said, and I am paraphrasing carefully here, that the strait is currently open and traffic is proceeding normally, but that when Iran faces aggression, the movement suffers serious interruptions. He then added that Iran is now in a state of war, and that wartime conditions cannot be governed by peacetime rules. That is not the language of a country trying to reassure international markets. That is the language of a country signaling that it retains the option to weaponize that choke point at any moment it chooses. Garibabadi also addressed the attacks on Iranian nuclear facilities directly. He stated that sites around the Bushehr nuclear plant, as well as installations in Ardakan, Kondab, Natanz, and Fordo, have been targeted. He described these strikes as violations of international law, the United Nations Charter, and the relevant resolutions of the International Atomic Energy Agency. He warned that if Iranian facilities continue to be struck from the territory of third countries, those countries should expect proportional responses against similar facilities within their own borders. That warning is not abstract. It is directed at Jordan, Iraq, and the Gulf states that host American military infrastructure and from whose airspace or territory operations against Iran may have been conducted. On the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, Garibabadi acknowledged something remarkable. He said that voices inside Iran, including members of parliament, are increasingly questioning why Iran should continue honoring its NPT commitments when its nuclear infrastructure is being destroyed under IAEA safeguards. Proposals for full withdrawal from the treaty are being discussed openly in the Iranian legislature. If that happens, the entire framework of international nuclear law faces a crisis it has never seen before. Now, let us move to the second major development, because what Trump said publicly in the last 24 hours takes this conflict into an entirely new dimension. The war between the United States, Israel, and Iran is not showing any signs of de-escalation as of April 2nd. New strikes were reported hitting a major Iranian bridge and killing a senior Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps general, Brigadier General Mohammad Ali Fatalizadeh. The bridge in question is the B1 bridge on the highway connecting Tehran to Karaj in Alborz province, which Iranian media had described as the tallest bridge in the Middle East. Social media footage showed catastrophic structural damage. Iranian officials reported 8 people killed and 95 wounded in 2 waves of strikes on the bridge. Separately, images from April 2nd showed smoke rising from the area of Mashhad's International Airport in northeastern Iran, one of the country's busiest aviation hubs. All of this comes one day after Trump addressed the nation on television and threatened to bomb Iran back to the Stone Age if Tehran did not move toward a deal. Trump then followed up on his Truth Social platform with a message that was remarkable even by the standards of his public communications. He declared that Iran's largest bridge had collapsed and would never be used again, and he issued a direct ultimatum demanding that Iran make a deal before it is too late and before nothing remains of what could still become a great country. That is a head of state of the United States publicly demanding surrender terms from a nation his military is actively bombing, in a social media post. Iran's response was defiant. Parliamentary Speaker Mohammad Bakr Kalibaf posted a direct challenge on social media, stating that Iranians do not merely talk about defending their country, they bleed for it, and that they have done so before and are ready to do so again. An Iranian military spokesman warned that broader and more destructive attacks are coming. Meanwhile, the Israel Defense Forces confirmed strikes on a ballistic missile storage facility belonging to the Iranian missile unit in the Tabriz area. Tabriz is in northwestern Iran, close to the borders with Azerbaijan and Turkey, which signals that Israeli operations are now reaching deep into Iranian territory far from the Gulf. Think about what is happening here for a moment. You have a sitting American president issuing public ultimatums via social media while his military is conducting active strikes. You have Iran simultaneously signaling it will not capitulate, threatening neighbors hosting American bases, questioning its treaty commitments, and drafting new protocols to assert control over the world's most important oil corridor. And you have Israel striking missile depots in the northwest of Iran while the IDF battles continue. This is not a limited engagement heading toward a negotiated pause. This looks like an escalating war with no clear off-ramp visible to either side. And that brings us to the third piece of news, which in many ways is the strategic blueprint that explains everything else. The Trump administration is expected to unveil a defense budget request of $1.5 trillion for fiscal year 2027 on Friday, with full details to follow on April 21st. To put that number in context, last year's defense request was $892 billion, with an additional $150 billion in supplemental spending that pushed the total past $1 trillion for the first time in history. What is being proposed now represents an increase that has not been seen in absolute terms since the years immediately following World War II. The flagship item in this budget is the Golden Dome Missile Defense Shield, a system Trump has championed and which carries a price tag of $185 billion on its own. The budget also includes continued procurement of Lockheed Martin F-35 fighter jets, Virginia-class submarines built by General Dynamics and Huntington Ingalls Industries, and a broad expansion of naval construction capacity. The official rationale from the Pentagon is threefold. First, deterring Chinese aggression in the Indo-Pacific. Second, restocking munitions that have been depleted by the ongoing conflicts in Israel, Iran, and Ukraine. Third, expanding production capacity so that American weapons stockpiles can be rebuilt and sustained at a pace that matches current and projected demand. But here is what that rationale actually reveals. The United States government is formally acknowledging in a budget document that its existing munition stockpiles have been significantly depleted by a war it is currently fighting with Iran, and it is requesting historic levels of funding to replenish them and build beyond them. That is not the language of an administration planning to wind down a conflict. That is the language of an administration planning for a prolonged and expanding military engagement. The budget will now go to Congress for debate, and it will face scrutiny from both sides. Some lawmakers will push back on the scale of the spending. Others will demand even more for specific systems or industries in their districts. But the political momentum behind massive defense appropriations is substantial in the current environment, and the probability that Congress significantly reduces a wartime defense request is historically very low. What you are watching right now, across all three of these news developments, is the architecture of a major war taking shape in real time. Iran is moving to assert legal control over the world's oil artery and signaling it may abandon the global nuclear non-proliferation framework. The United States is bombing Iranian infrastructure while its president issues public ultimatums on social media and prepares to request the largest defense budget in modern history. Israel is striking deep into Iranian territory, and the Gulf states and neighboring countries are caught in the middle, hosting American forces while facing Iranian warnings of proportional retaliation. The global economy is watching the Strait of Hormuz every single day, because 20 million barrels of oil depend on what happens next. The question is no longer whether this conflict will escalate. The question is how far it goes and who blinks first. And right now, neither side is blinking.